I'm doing Norton, and we run a practice called Norton Accountancy. We've got 3 to 4 offices and 1,500 clients doing all sorts of things, and we've got 22 staff. We're in Staple Hill as our main office in Bristol. And basically, I'm going to ask you questions as well, because everybody's tax situation is going to be completely and utterly different. So it's really hard just for me to talk and then find out it wasn't relevant to 90% of you. So can I just ask you some questions? Who's got more than one source of income? So as well as tutoring, who's got a job? Yep, job. Or who's got a pension? So who's got nothing other than tutoring? Nobody. See, I thought that. So you've got you're mainly tutoring.
I'm working, yeah.
And you're mainly tutoring. So just a couple of mainly tutoring ones. Okay, so that's why it's going to be quite complicated. But yours is
I have a pension.
Yes,
so
yes. So it's other taxable income as well. Yeah. Okay. So basically, what I'm going to do, I keep remembering to walk over here and push a button. So, what we're going to talk about today. No, we're not. Where's the button? Oh, there we are. We're going to talk about self-employment, about running, whether you're going to be a sole trader, partnership. That's an option that a lot of people don't consider. A little bit about limited companies, but not too much because it won't really be relevant. Has anyone here got a limited company? No. Is anyone here back registered in another business? Is anyone registered as self-employed, apart from tutoring? No, that's okay, that's fine. So we won't probably talk about limited companies. We'll talk about whether you've got additional income from employment and how it affects you. Talk briefly about the taxes that you pay in the UK, self-assessment, corporation tax, PAYE, national insurance, all really fascinating stuff. And a little bit about VAT, but it won't apply to most of the people here, but you just need to know how it would affect you. A little bit about capital gains, and then things about how you register for tax and national insurance, what expenses you can claim, which is usually the most interesting one because people have their own theories on what's allowable and what's not allowable. Don't take advice from people in pubs, because they always say, my friend in the pub said I could claim for my holiday, my children's prams and all sorts of things, so you should ignore that. And then basically we'll talk a little bit about record keeping and what's good record keeping, what's bad record keeping. Does anybody, who's been self-employed as a tutor for more than a year?
I think probably most
of them, yes.
My feeling is that I think most of us have been struggling with this for a few years.
Yeah. Oh, right.
And I've worked out how I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether what I do is correct. And the thing I'm really interested in is this B&B allowance that we're allowed, 4,700.
Yeah, the rent
and how we cope with that, because I think that's an important part.
It's kind of a little bit that, I mean, I could talk about that very briefly first of all, because then that might put your minds at rest. The thing about rent room relief, it isn't really for anything where you're offering a service which is associated. So your service of tuition and accommodation is not divisible. So you can't say you're not having children come to stay with you or adults coming to stay with you just for accommodation. It's not like having a student from the university who's just coming around. That's what the rental room relief is for initially. It's just to increase the number of dwellings available for students or for young people, and it's to encourage people to take people into their own homes. But they're not really supposed to be providing services, because when you do provide a service you are running a business. And so sometimes with B&B, if you're just doing B&B and so you are actually giving them a service of breakfast, you can get away with the rental room relief. And there's nothing to stop you from splitting your income however you want and putting it on your tax return. But the issue is if you do that, the revenue might accept it one year, might accept it another year, and then they might challenge it. And when they challenge it, you then have to pay it back. Because obviously a lot of people will just guess, oh well, I've earned £15,000, I'll take off 4,250 and then I'll just use the rest and claim expenses against the rest. First of all, it's messy, and secondly, there is no way of dividing that which makes any common sense, because what you're doing is you're providing a service, and the service of accommodation goes hand in hand. I think the school doesn't pay you for accommodation and the service of tuition separately. They give you a one-off fee. So if you are guessing, it's kind of your guess against the revenues. Like I can park on yellow lines and I don't have to phone Ringo, but I might get a ticket, so it's a risk I take. So I think with rent and room relief, I think you have to just be a little bit careful that it actually does apply to you. And it would if you had another student staying with you from the university and you were just letting a room on a regular basis. Then yes, you give them a key, they come and go as they please. You're not providing them any service apart from accommodation. Then that is what the rent a room relief is for.
But why does it have to be a guess? I mean, if you take your bills for the period when the student is there and divide it out and come up with a figure for that stay, you know, if I have one person with us and I have the three of us with my husband and I divide it by 3,
Yes.
come up with a total for heating and lighting and for...
But you're going to do that anyway as self-employed.
Yes, is it?
No, but you're going to do that if you're self-employed. But the rent a room relief allowance is something completely different. It's a one-off annual charge of $4,250 that you can tick the box on your tax return. You don't declare $4,250, but you are going to be claiming, as a self-employed tutor, you are going to be claiming a proportion of all those expenses. And no, it's not a guess, so that's absolutely fine. But what the guess is, if you are trying to claim rent a room relief, is how do you divide your tuition fee and your accommodation fee, because there's no way of doing it.
But could it be, if it's in our interest to have that division, could it be in the interest of living there in English?
Definitely
to
not.
Split the fee?
Definitely not. Definitely for VAT purposes, it wouldn't be. Because basically, accommodation, when not provided in association with education, is vatable. So if they were to split it, then the tuition fee is not vatable, but the accommodation could be seen to be vatable, because what you're saying is you're making 2 supplies. So for it to be exempt from VAT, you have to make 1 supply. So that could be an argument. I mean, there's nothing to stop anyone from putting it on their tax return, but you won't be able to accurately know of your fee of £800 how much of that related to rent a room and how much didn't. I personally wouldn't do it for our clients, because that's not what it's there for. So you are going across the line of, you're doing it because it's possibly an advantage to you, but that doesn't mean to say that's the way to do it. But there's nothing to stop you from trying it, but it's questionable, and I wouldn't do it.
I think it might, because I've ended up ringing the tax office twice.
Yes.
2 consecutive years over this. And it's been quite interesting that I've actually put onto the supervisor. But they have allowed me because I don't earn that much, so I think
Exactly.
it depends on your threshold of earnings.
Yes, yeah. But if they wanted to, it's like anything. If you park on yellow lines and you see the traffic warden, you can say, "Oh, I'm just really sorry, but I've just gone to get some more money or whatever," and they'll let you off. But some inland revenue people will just take it and say, "No, you're providing services," and then you have to argue that you're not providing services, that you are just providing accommodation, which you're clearly not just providing accommodation. So it is a really kind of difficult one to say, yes, you can. Yes, you can, but you
But
can...
I did explain to them how I've done it.
Yes.
And how I was...
Yeah, I think if your total income is less than £10,000 a year from all sources, it really doesn't matter, because you're not going to pay tax anyway, so it would be really not worth thinking about. You may as well just become self-employed anyway. And anyway, because you are providing a service, you still have to become self-employed. Then it gives you 2 complicated things to discuss and decide upon. Whereas if you just do it as self-employed, you can claim all your expenses anyway. So the chances are you won't necessarily be paying any more tax, but at least you'll be paying the right amount of tax, and there will be no comeback on you because you're not doing anything wrong. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you can, I'm not saying you can't do it, it's just, but I know that is a sort of question that a lot of people have considered. Are any people doing it under the rent a room relief scheme and splitting it? Yeah. I mean, you can, I mean, you're not, but it's just, if you get someone looking at it, they will say, well, you are providing, if they don't know that you're providing accommodation, they may think it's to a university student, and then you are self-employed as a tutor, and then that may be okay, but that doesn't mean to say it's the correct way of doing it. Does that make sense?
I've got a mix, because I've got university students and they do tutoring separately.
But you could only claim one lot of $4,250 anyway.
Yes.
Yes.
I did use an accountant because I was terrified of getting on the website of
Yeah.
the revenue, and he said that I could split it, but anything over that you couldn't. So it has to be done like 2 different ways. So he said yes.
Yeah.
What I earn from my lady is one thing.
Yes, yeah.
And then the rent room is the other thing.
Yeah. But if the rent a room was $4,250 just for renting to a student, then everything else is going to be taxable.
Never right.
It's going to never.
But we pay tax on that different rate, and we have to. The other thing is for the rent room, he said that we have to split it because the house is in joint names. It's a joint mortgage.
Yes.
So my husband has to. The income is taken. He has to pay tax on his half. higher rate,
Technically that's wrong in the sense whether your students from the LLE are for you.
Oh, no,
Yes.
the
only
LLE
for-
ones,
but for the other ones, yes.
Okay, so that's
Yes.
something else to consider.
Yes, yeah. It just makes it
If it's a
more
joint
complicated.
mortgage, you have to
Yes,
split it.
yes. Again, people don't, but
No.
we'll go through that again. So
Can I just say, we are able to work out how much a night is for accommodation, because sometimes we accommodate students for an extra day and we don't teach them, we know exactly what that rate is, and that rate would actually be the same as the accommodation for the rest of the time.
so you can see what that rate is.
You could work it out.
I mean, it's
That is a daily fee we just pay for that particular extra day, and so we cannot be doing. We don't calculate, we don't split.
yeah. So if it's not split, you'd have to argue with the revenue, and it's the LLE that are telling you they're paying X amount to accommodate this student for this amount of time, and therefore that's how it should be shown on your tax return. It's something that you could think about. You could work it out both ways and see if it makes it. For some people, it won't make any difference at all. So we'll come on to sort of record keeping. No, sorry. So basically, methods of trading. So self-employment. This is all about what self-employment. You're self-employed if you run your own business, take responsibility for its success or failure. If you have several customers, possibly at the same time. If you decide when, where, and how you want to work. You can hire other people if you want to help you. So, oh, sorry, am I blocking it? I can't. Oh, I'll read from here. I was just reading from there. So you have to decide. You have to be in charge of what you do. You can hire other people. So if you wanted to hire a cleaner, for example, you could and pay for that. You provide items of equipment for your work that you do. You're responsible for paying back money if you're not providing a service which you're onward customers not satisfied with, so you're taking a financial risk. You get an agreed fixed price for your work, you're not paid by the hour, you can sell goods or services to make a profit. And if in doubt, go on to the revenue employment status indicator. So sometimes you'll find an employer forces you, is really an employer, but is forcing you into self-employment because it's beneficial for them to do so. So if ever you have that, you can go on to that status inquiry, answer the questions, and it will tell you if you are really an employee or self-employed. For what you do here, I've looked at your contracts, you are really self-employed, so there's no doubt about that. So basically, that's the sort of conditions of self-employment, really.
Excuse me, will you be able to send this to us?
I think, yes, apparently it's being filmed, unfortunately.
We send everybody the account.
Yes. So, if you haven't, has anyone here not registered with the Inland Revenue yet? Yep. So this is what you have to do. You don't need an accountant to register. You just go online, click on that link, and you fill out the forms as a self-assessment for self-assessment form. They then send you something called a UTR number, which is a unique taxpayer's reference. That stays with you for the rest of your life, and it's like a passport really. So whenever you speak to the revenue, you would use that reference number. When you file your self-assessment return at the year end, you use the same reference number. It's your indicator. And basically, they are changing national insurance. They used to have to apply to pay national insurance separately or apply to have a certificate of exception from national insurance, which if your income from self-employment is low, you could do. But now, from April, apparently the Inland Revenue are going to do that as well. So there may not be the requirement to register separately for national insurance. When you become a sole trader, once you've registered, you then have to keep records of your income and expenditure. That means bank statements, that means correspondence from LLE, that means all the receipts that you can collect. If you think it's holding exclusively for business use, keep the receipt, and then it's a chance that you'll be able to claim at the year end. Then every year you have to file a self-assessment return any time after the 6th of April. Normally people don't start doing them until May or June time, and you have until the 31st of January. Wouldn't recommend you leave it to the 31st of January because you will have no idea what your tax bill is and you have to pay it on the 31st of January. So it's best to do it sometime May, June time. You'll have everything you need to do your self-assessment. The tax bill is due